March really felt like America was on a razor's edge. What kicked off as a distant crisis overseas, it sent shockwaves rattling through the government, out onto our streets, and yeah, right into our wallets. So let's break down how this 1 month unfolded, looking at it through 3 different lenses: the conflict, the cost, and the culture. And wow, it all started with rhetoric this sharp. This quote from the Trump campaign, it just set this incredibly confrontational tone right at the beginning of the month. It was a clear signal that the brewing conflict with Iran was about to just take over the national conversation. This wasn't just some headline, it was basically a declaration of intent that set the stage for everything that came next. So first things first, we've got to look overseas. We have to understand the geopolitical crisis that grabbed the world's attention and pulled the United States right into the middle of it. Things were escalating on so many fronts at once. We were hearing that more U.S. troops were probably heading to the Middle East. At the same time, you could turn on the TV and see live feeds showing the skylines of Tel Aviv and Jerusalem under threat, which made it all feel so immediate, so real. You had global figures like Pope Leo pleading for a ceasefire. Then boom, a statement from President Trump saying Iran had agreed to never have a nuclear weapon. For a second, it seemed like a way out, even if it was a bit confusing. But that feeling didn't last long, because polls started coming out showing that most Americans already felt the U.S. military was in way too deep. And believe me, this was not just a story happening thousands of miles away. The political pressure from all this sent massive shockwaves right back home, stirring up chaos in Washington, where, let's be honest, the crisis became just another weapon in domestic political fights. And the Department of Homeland Security found itself smack in the middle of it all. You see, as lawmakers were clashing, this international crisis was being used as leverage in a really bitter fight over DHS funding. It was threatening to paralyze a huge part of our national security. And that political fight? Well, it had a real, staggering human cost. We're talking more than 480 airport security officers, TSA agents, who just up and quit their jobs. Can you blame them? They were caught in the crossfire of a potential government shutdown, with no idea when they might see their next paycheck. This staffing crisis got so bad, the government had to scramble and take emergency measures. We started seeing reports that ICE officers were being brought in to help out the totally strained TSA at major airports like Phoenix. That right there is a huge red flag that the system was under incredible pressure. And you could just feel the frustration building. The acting TSA chief really captured it with this blunt statement. The very people we trust to keep us safe when we travel were being used as political pawns, and their own leadership was making it crystal clear. This was just not okay. And right in the middle of all this chaos, the department gets a major leadership change. Mark-Wayne Mullen was sworn in as the new Secretary of Homeland Security, stepping into an agency that was just being squeezed from every direction, both at home and abroad. Of course, all of this instability had a direct line to the economy. These consequences weren't just some abstract political arguments. No, they were being felt in global markets and, maybe most importantly for a lot of folks, at the gas pump. Which really brings us to the central question for so many people, right? What was the real cost of all this? How did it actually hit the average person's bank account? Okay, so let's break it down. The impact was global. Reuters was reporting on fuel prices just soaring, causing people to rush to gas stations everywhere, from Chile to the Philippines. On Wall Street, investors were getting really jittery, wondering if they'd been too optimistic. Oil analysts were trying to figure out what would happen if oil stayed above $110 a barrel. And here's a consequence you might not think about. Critical aid for other crises in places like Gaza and Sudan, it just stopped. The president of the Chicago Fed put it as bluntly as you can, laying out the serious economic risks of the conflict. And look, when a top economist from the Federal Reserve voices that kind of concern, you know the financial threat is very, very real. But here's the thing. Even as this massive crisis was just dominating every headline, something else was happening. American life, in all its messy complexity, just marched on. It's a powerful reminder that even during tense times, a country's focus is never just on one thing. History is never that simple. So you've got all this tension, and then this happens. President Trump hosts the soccer legend Lionel Messi and his Inter Miami team at the White House. It was this very deliberate moment of celebration, a big cultural event that was clearly designed to cut through all the noise of the conflict. And elsewhere, you had Hollywood doing what Hollywood does. The Academy Awards went on, giving the country a totally different kind of thing to focus on,
a big dose of glamour, and honestly, a little bit of escapism.
At the same time, this huge social and economic shift was really picking up steam. The explosion of legal sports betting became a major topic of conversation. It was changing how millions of Americans were engaging with sports, creating a whole new kind of risk and reward that was miles away from the geopolitical stage. And over in the entertainment world, a really interesting conversation started brewing. Commentators began talking about a new golden age for Black sitcoms. It sparked this whole cultural analysis about representation, creativity, and the kinds of stories America was telling itself during a pretty tense moment. And finally, there was that one reliable rhythm of the seasons you could almost always count on. As March started to wind down, baseball teams like the Yankees and Giants were holding their workouts, a sure sign of spring, and that familiar, comforting feeling of normalcy that comes with opening day. So when you really step back and look at it, March was this collision of different worlds. You had a nation trying to deal with a war overseas, chaos in its own government, and real economic pain, all while its cultural heart just kept on beating. The real question is, after being pulled in so many different directions at once, what new crossroads did America find itself at?